When Back to the Future Part 2 was greenlit, director Robert Zemeckis and writer Bob Gale had already mapped out a continuation, but the scope became so vast they decided to split the story across 2 films. While Part 2 focused on a fast-paced, high-concept vision of time travel, Part 3 would be its tonal opposite, a slower, more romantic adventure set in the Old West. Why a western? Well, both Gale and Zemeckis were both lifelong fans of classic Hollywood westerns. In fact, a joke in Part 2 about Hill Valley's founding in 1885 planted the seed. What if Marty and Doc went back to the Old West, where modern conveniences are gone and a DeLorean looks even more absurd? Zemeckis once said, "We did the future, we did the past, and we wanted to go way back." And what's more American than the western? School shooting? Filming began immediately after Part 2 wrapped. From January to May 1989, cast and crew shifted from the tech-filled streets of 2015 to the dusty plains of 1885 California, filmed on location in Sonora and on custom-built sets at Universal Studios. Despite the tight schedule and physically demanding shoots, Zemeckis and cinematographer Dean Cundy embraced a more natural, sweeping aesthetic. With wide vistas and practical effects, Part 3 became visually distinct from the earlier films. The crew built a real, functioning western town from scratch, including the clock tower under construction, a beautiful nod to the trilogy's symbolic centerpiece. Fox returned in triple duty again as present-day Marty, western-era Marty, and even Marty's Irish accent, Seamus, with the worst Irish accent you will ever hear.
Exactly. How is it that you came to be way out here without a horse?
Then again, David Boreanaz says hi. They actually tried to get Ronald Reagan himself to cameo as the mayor of Hill Valley as a way to tribute the Reagan joke in the first movie, but unfortunately he turned them down. Party pooper. I will admit that Marty trying to explain the timeline of events of all 3 movies is hilarious.
I came back to 1955 again with you, the you from 1985, because we had to get a book from Biff. So once I got the book back, that is the you from 1985, we're in the DeLorean and it got struck by lightning and he got sent back to 1885.
This time Doc gets a chance to shine, not just as a sidekick but as a romantic lead. Lloyd shows unexpected tenderness as Doc falls in love for the first time with the mum from Elf, and it is interesting to see his character for a change getting caught up with romance, ignoring the mission at hand while Marty is the one trying to get them back on track. Clara was played by Mary Steenburgen, who was initially hesitant to join a sci-fi comedy, but she changed her mind after her children begged her to take part. And the amount of roles that actors took on just because of their kids is insane. Wilson is again the trilogy's main antagonist, now playing Biff's ancestor, a gunslinging outlaw because apparently everyone in his bloodline is just a colossal douchebag. It's genetic. His performance balances menace with comic timing, making Buford Tannen one of the trilogy's most memorable villains. While Part 2 was dizzying and cerebral, Part 3 was warmer, slower, and driven by character over paradox. It's a love letter to classic cinema with homages to John Ford westerns, classic train heists, and even Sergio Leone's spaghetti westerns. And hey look, ZZ Top even make a cameo as a hillbilly band. Because... why not? ZZ Top! Despite being the third in a franchise, Part 3 was not phoned in. Zemeckis insisted on practical effects and real stunts. The train sequence was particularly dangerous, requiring intense coordination. The DeLorean on the train tracks was a functioning vehicle built for the film, and a real steam locomotive was used and later destroyed in camera for the movie's finale. There's quite a dark scene in which Tannen tries to hang Marty, and this nearly went incredibly wrong. Michael J. Fox insisted on doing the stunt himself, but something didn't work. While rehearsals all went fine, on this particular occasion the rope became too tight and cut off his airways. Fox actually passed out and was swinging by the rope unconscious for several seconds before Zemeckis realised that he wasn't acting and cut him free. Back to the Future Part 3 nearly killed Michael J. Fox! You would have thought Stuart Little 3 would have done that.
Don't you worry about that.
The score, once again by Alan Silvestri, blends the iconic Back to the Future theme with sweeping western motifs, one of the most dynamic soundtracks in the trilogy. Back to the Future Part 3 hit theatres on May the 25th, 1990, just 6 months after Part 2. The strategy was unusual but effective. The quick turnaround kept audience interest alive. It earned $244 million worldwide, slightly below Part 2, but still a strong success. Critics appreciated the tonal shift. Roger Ebert praised it as the most human of the trilogy, while some missed the time-bending trickery of Part 2. Most agreed it was a satisfying and heartfelt conclusion. Fans loved the romantic arc, the western homage, and the emotional send-off. The film ends with Doc saying goodbye, departing in a steam-powered flying time train, with Clara and their children Jules and Vern, one of which for some reason wants Jennifer to approach his crotch, the little pervert, but it's as whimsical and charming as it is emotional. Part 3 wrapped the trilogy with a rare sense of closure. It didn't tease sequels or extended universes. Doc's time travel days were over. Marty's future was changed. The DeLorean was destroyed for good. Although it is very weird that when he's in 1955, he finds the grave for the 1885 Doc, and he's like really shocked. It's this whole deal that he finds his grave and oh my god, he's dead. I mean, yes, it has been 70 years. Did you expect him to live forever? It turns out the Doc hid the DeLorean in a mine shaft in 1885 and it went undisturbed all this time, which is a pretty sweet idea. Even writing him a damn manual on how to work the thing. The movie does continue its great humour, pointing out the difference in the times.
No wonder this circuit failed. It says made in Japan.
What do you mean, Doc? All the best stuff is made in Japan.
It's also incredibly strange that Doc has to spend the last two movies venting about how you should never mess with past or future events, but here, Marty fully intends to go back to 1885 to rescue his friend and he has absolutely no objection whatsoever, although he's concerned that driving into this picture will lead him to real Native Americans, or this incredibly dated dialogue. But since when does he drive into something that's there in present day? He drove into a farm before, but the farm wasn't there. What? Oh well, it's a forced moment for a forced joke that still gets a laugh out of me, just like this joke that they keep reusing.
See you in the future.
You mean the past? Exactly.
I was actually surprised to find out that this one got better reviews than part 2, as in all of the exchanges that I've had with fans about these films, this has been widely regarded as the least good one. And I do have to agree, but I do really like it. It's not bad, it's still a lot of fun as he goes on this big rescue story, but admittedly it is a lot more basic than the previous installments as far as the plot goes. Even if Marty could somehow outrun a damn bear, the film continues to have incredible split screens because all descendants apparently look completely identical. They rehash a lot of the humour, what with Marty waking up to not Lorraine and not Biff landing in manure again and rehashing the skateboard and hoverboard scenes, but I don't see it as running out of material. I just see it as a running joke to tie all three movies together. And much like Calvin Klein, Marty now manages to convince everyone in town that his name is Clint Eastwood.
What kind of stupid name is that?
The filmmakers actually did ask Eastwood for permission first and he agreed, finding the joke rather hilarious. The movie's humour is on point as Marty meets his great-great-grandfather for the first time.
And you peed on me.
The movie is great and I'm baffled that not more people like this.
What idiot dressed you in that outfit?
You did.
The whole setup is that Tannen kills Doc because he owes him some money, but my question is they've come back in time, why don't they just give him the money? This leads to several scenes of them ignoring this fact. It's never brought up, just pay the man. In fact, it's worse because he acknowledges it.
No, I wish I'd paid him off.
So pay him off then! Or just wait until he's asleep, sneak in and shoot him in the head. Oh, and I realise they need Marty to be a dumb high school kid, but he doesn't stop to think how the hell they're going to get gasoline in 1885 until Doc brings it up. And Marty doesn't act this stupid in any other part of the trilogy. He's not Biff. Also, it's pretty douchey. They act like they're not hijacking a damn train. Considering in 1885 there's no completed bridge, so they are fully aware that they're stealing the train and then destroying it into a ravine, wasting a ton of money and resources. Although it's worth it for them to name the ravine after Clint Eastwood. Although how would anyone know that he fell in the ravine? No one was aware that he was on the train. Their faces were covered. But continuing the douchey ancestry, Tannen also forces himself onto Clara, yet everyone in his bloodline's a rapist too. It's pretty cool as Marty takes him out with a frisbee before being called yellow. It's okay, Doc will sort him out.
Marty, you can't go losing your judgment every time someone calls you a name.
Even though later in the film he gets called yellow again, but it doesn't work. Everyone calls him a coward and he doesn't care. He learns to let it go, which is a huge character change. I mean, this is such a cool moment until he has to go out and confront him anyway to save Doc's life, so it kind of falls flat.
There's no point in denying it.
There's actually a deleted scene in which Tannen was supposed to shoot Marshall Strickland in the back, killing him in front of his son, but this was edited out of the final cut as it was deemed too depressing, whereas rape and murder in these films are apparently no big deal.
That doesn't make sense.
I just love how after 3 movies, Doc really thinks that telling Clara that he's a time-traveling scientist from the future will actually work. She ends up dumping him and he spends all day in the bar telling people crazy stories about the future, which is hilarious.
Of course we run, but for recreation, for fun.
Run for fun? What the hell kind of fun is that?
Well, I feel attacked. Although he hasn't even had any alcohol yet, and then he passes out after 1 drink. That sounds like my partner. But at least they're self-aware in this one.
Why do we have to cut these things so damn close?
And even though some foreshadowing is lazy and forced, it does still get a chuckle out of me.
Something inside me told me I should be here. As if my future had something to do with it.
It's also a good thing that Clara sits on this train directly in front of 2 guys who just so happen to interact with Doc so they can loudly speak about how much he loves her, after knowing her for a couple of days.
Thanks again.
Obviously, it's a cool moment as Marty mimics Clint Eastwood with a metal plate to block a bullet, but this plan only really works if he doesn't shoot him in the face. Oh well, still a badass moment, I don't care. And just because she heard someone say Doc loves her, she then finds a model in his house that says time machine on it and now instantly believes that he's a time-travelling scientist. Them running atop the train does look pretty sweet, and there's a lot of suspense as they're not even sure if the train will reach the correct speed. I mean, we know because we've seen a movie before, but they don't know. The issue is, Clara is kind of annoying and just gets in the way of the suspense. I feel Marty's frustration. They're about to make it there and she shows up and completely screws things up. Although I'm not sure why Marty keeps using a walkie-talkie to update Doc on the speed of the train, considering Doc clearly isn't holding his anymore, but oh well, it's for our sake obviously. And somehow, despite having never used a hoverboard or skateboard before, Doc nails it perfectly. Obviously this one doesn't hold up to the first 2, but I do think it's a lot of fun and it's still a damn good film, even with more terrible green screens. The time machine gets completely destroyed, which is a pretty strong moment. Although he returns to 1985 and Biff is now back to being a pussy, but in this timeline Biff was still an asshole after being punched by George, so why the hell would he still be a pussy in present day? What the hell changed? There's also a subtle incident mentioned in part 2 about Marty having a car accident, and in this one we find out it's because he gets called a chicken, but on this occasion he rises above it and prevents his own injury, which is a pretty cool moment. But somehow, despite not being able to recreate the time machine before, he can magically in 1885 create a train version which can fly, because Doc is God. I also love the Doc's entire arc across the trilogy. The first film he says not to know too much about your own future. He lessens up a bit in part 2, but is still pretty certain on being unable to change your own future, but here, his message comes full circle and it's a great way to tie the whole trilogy together.
Your future hasn't been written yet. No one's has. Your future is whatever you make it. So make it a good one.
This is the greatest trilogy of all time. I said it and I don't care. Yes, this is the least good one, but it still maintains the charm from the first two. There are other trilogies also considered to be perfect, but this one holds some kind of sentimentality for me and it has a lot of replay value. It's just really feel good, despite the rape, sexual assault and murder. Despite some dated and questionable moments, it has some of the greatest casting in Hollywood history, hilarious lines and some of the most iconic scenes ever put to film. Back to the Future is legendary, and the question lingered for years, where does the series go from here? All rights to additional movies are held entirely by Robert Zemeckis, who claims that so long as he lives, any and all attempts to revive or reboot the franchise would be blocked. However, he did express interest in directing an adaptation of the Back to the Future stage musical, and even floated the idea to the executives at Universal, but they decided not to pursue. Bob Gale also rejected the idea of doing a reboot without Fox or Lloyd, though he did say that the 2011 Back to the Future video game was probably the closest to what a fourth movie could look like. Then again, they also said this about Ghostbusters.
You thought wrong, dude.
Both Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox have expressed interest in coming back to the series, with Lloyd proposing the idea of Marty and Doc travelling back to ancient Rome, but both have insisted that it should only be with a good script and with the same cast and crew. But honestly, I don't think it's needed to continue the story. Against all odds, these guys came together to make what I consider to be a perfect trilogy, and I just don't think any follow-up would be able to live up to that. A remake is off the table. Nobody could ever replicate these two legendary performances. A reboot or a sequel, I don't know. Maybe it could work with Marty and Doc in minor roles helping out someone, but in that case, why not just make an all-new time travel movie instead of touching this? I suppose an adaptation of the musical could at least be different, but I don't think it would match how good the first three films really were. In the years that followed, the trilogy has been praised for its cohesive storytelling, a feat few franchises have matched. Part 3 in particular is now recognised as a loving homage to westerns, introducing the genre to a new generation. It's a rare sci-fi film with a romantic, optimistic tone, a blueprint for how to land a trilogy without stretching the story too far. Spielberg himself called the trilogy the most elegantly constructed in film history. Back to the Future Part 3 may not be as flashy or quotable as the first film, nor as ambitious as the second, but it brings something else. Heart. It's a story about growth, love, and learning from the past. By the end, the trilogy doesn't just close a loop in time, it closes an emotional journey. And with that, Doc Brown flew off into legend, and Back to the Future rode into cinematic history, one of the few trilogies to stick every landing. So personally, I think they should leave this classic series well alone.